Good day, mate, and welcome back to another lovely MMA edition of the Sideline Guys, and it's only right that I am joined by a man who shares many things with me, but most importantly, he's wearing the same colors as me. My brother from another mother, my brother from another nationality, the man that looks a little like he's on his way to insanity, but guess what? He is killing me with not a shred of vanity. My guy, Sean Negron, how's it going, brother?
It's going well, man. It's going well. I feel like this year is already flying by. We're already in mid-February. Um,
Mid-February, is it?
yeah, it's is it not? Is it not almost mid-February already? Feels like it. See what I mean? Maybe I'm too ahead of my time. It's crazy, man. I feel like we were just talking about the last pay-per-view card, and now we're already here uh, at this pay-per-view card. It's like every time we talk about a fight coming up, it gets so crazy, and then we're back to this next pay-per-view, next pay-per-view, next pay-per-view. So it's great to be here, always with you, and let's see how this turns out.
Wow. Sean being nice to me off the intro? God damn, this is a nice change of pace. Shout out to that. While I got you all here, make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube. You can follow me at Negron MMA on Twitter as well as TikTok. And you could also, if you feel like it, follow me on Instagram, Chris Negron _ Sean. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at I guess bsreports.org. That's my website for anyone that wants to get involved in sports writing or anything sports in general. And my email is on the bottom or it's in the description there, so you can always hit me up there, and I will help you get started.
You heard the man. So we have an
Hold on,
interesting
hold on.
week.
I'm sorry. I have to bring this up to you. Today's a big day, and I want to bring it to you first and I wanted you to start talking before I interrupted you, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
But I wanted to bring to you because we did find out today, and I know this is, near and dear to your heart, but Dominick Cruz did retire today. And
Wow.
before we get into UFC pay-per-view 312, I wanted to give you the floor for a couple minutes, and you tell me what Dom Cruz meant to you, because he's one of my favorite fighters all time, and I know a lot of people don't like him because of who he is. I guess out of the octagon, as a trash talker and sort of an asshole, but I love that. That's what I felt like made fighters. But I'll let you have the floor here. And how do you feel about Dom Cruz's retirement?
Wow, Sean, I love this. You actually set me up in a way I wasn't mentally prepared for. I gotta say right off the top, it is a sad day in MMA because I am a huge Dominic Cruz fan. When I initially really became a huge fan, it was right around the same time that he was gearing up for an amazing comeback against a guy named Takeya Mizugaki. And going through that journey, right? That is very how else can I say this? Very what's the word? Par for the course for his entire career, right? But from that point forward, you see the promise, right? But it just kept getting stopped short by the unfortunate injury bug. I gotta say, man, it's really hard to find a parallel in any sport that matches the greatness of Dominic Cruz because not only has majority of his career been robbed from us as fans by the injury bug, but he has also achieved all-time great status despite that. I think there's not a lot of people that have that duality in their careers. I think funny enough, this is a good shout of how much of a Dominic Cruz fan I am. I did a presentation back in college on effective speaking using a Dominic Cruz clip. That specific clip being where he talks about, that he doesn't. When he found the happiest moment of his life was when he found out he didn't need the belt, right? And what that entire moment and that press conference is legendary as well. But just being a part of his career in the latter half, right? And not understanding what he achieved until I was able to go back and really look into it. I think Dominick Cruz is a trendsetter in this sport. I think he's someone that really changed the game as far as what needs to be expected from athletes. There is still not a parallel when it comes to his footwork and his elusiveness matched with his wrestling prowess, right? And being able to put you in a position to basically outfox you and then punish you for making you make those mistakes with his footwork alone, right? Such a unique fighter, such a unique human being, and I think he doesn't get the, in my opinion, the credit he deserves from fans because he does rub some people the wrong way, and I can understand why. I think he's a real intellectual add to this sport. So I love that he's going to continue to be around in that capacity for us MMA fans. But man, this is a sad day. It really sucks that we didn't get, and I'm sure it sucks for him, right? That he didn't get to have that retirement moment. um, this is the worst way, in my opinion, for an athlete to go out because it's most likely in a couple years when he's on some TRT and that shoulder's feeling good that, hey, maybe I might come back, right? But ultimately, I think his legacy and what he's done is solidified regardless of if he ever fought again. And I think we are not going to see another guy like Dom Cruz in this sport, man. This guy was able to run this weight class in a time where, first of all, when he started out, this weight class didn't even exist, right? And then to be able to run this weight class for so long, despite the injury woes, and then be able to come back in what was considered his second prime and then be able to beat TJ Dillashaw and become champion again. Once again, this is a man that will not be replicated in this sport and what he's been able to accomplish. So shout out to Dominick Cruz. If we were robbed of anything, we were robbed of a potential Mount Rushmore fighter because of how injury plagued his career has been, from knees to shoulders to fucking knees and toes next up. Who knows? But yeah, literally plantar fasciitis to toes too. Yeah, this man's been every single part of the body that could break down did. So it's really sad when you think about how great he was despite that and what could have been. But shout out to Dom Cruz. Salute to you in retirement. You're the fucking man. And I love you more than most MMA fans ever would.
Hey man, I got to give you props on that one. That was beautiful. It is really crazy to see how fast time goes with someone like Dom Cruz, always there. And I think we knew for the last couple years that Dom Cruz, didn't have a lot of time left. I remember when he came back against Casey Kennedy. Was it Kennedy? Could have been. Um, and I thought, I was surprised he took that fight because he was so used to the big names. Took 2 or 3 years off after the injury. You know, before fighting Henry Cejudo, 4 years off it felt, and then uh, the the fight against Demetrius Johnson, another 3 years off. Like you just felt the injuries were always his biggest, opponent throughout his entire career. And the worst part was I felt like, to me, as a fan, as of late, you know, when in his last fight when he lost to Cheeto Vera, it like it honestly hurt me because I felt like he was really trying to make a run here, and I felt in that fight that he was winning that fight, and I felt like it was close, but I didn't just got caught. And then, I was really excited for this final fight against Rob Font. Granted, I've said this on the show so many times. I really wish they would have, paired him with Garbrandt one more time, because that fight their first fight was so electric and was such a career defining moment for Cody, that it was like it would have been great to, all these years later, they're both still here, and you know they're both champions, and to just give them one final go, because we don't know either how much longer Cody's got. So it was just one of those where it really sucked to see, because I really wanted to be able to, no matter how the fight went against Rob Font, have the UFC give him that little, video montage of everything he's done, from WEC all the way to UFC, and being I think Uriah Faber's biggest and worst opponent and hardest opponent he's ever faced. I felt like he basically made sure Uriah Faber could never get the belt in the UFC. So, I got to give Cruz all the credit in the world, man. Unbelievable for the talent that he had at that period of time. Changed the game. And, now you got so many fighters who have said, oh, well, it was Dominick Cruz who showed me this. It was Dominick Cruz who I saw his footwork. I saw the way he, you know, feinted and used his lead foot, and how that's how you got light heavyweights saying that. You got bantamweights to flyweights saying that. So it really is a time where you feel so old. You got these fighters that you looked up to, and now they're long gone. And now I feel like Dom Cruz for me was like probably one of the last people for me to where I really started watching, and I looked at Dom Cruz as like a champion, but still so young in this game. And I think for me, it's probably Max Holloway is like the last little taste of like young talent that is just now getting older. And I feel like it's a whole new regime now, and it sucks, man. It sucks that Dom Cruz hurt his shoulder. I think he said he popped his shoulder out twice in 8 months. It's a brutal injury and brutal pain, and it sucks, man. But I love Dom Cruz, and I wish him the best. And it won't be crazy because we'll hear him on the broadcast every fight night. So it's not like he's going away forever. It's just the end of his fighting career.
Whew, it's a tough one to start it out and come from one tough subject to another. We've got our standings as current. I am sitting at 20-18 for our picks head to head, which brings me to 52.63%. We're moving on up, baby. Sean is sitting at 25-13, which brings him to 65.79%. And in Dynasty, ladies and gentlemen, I am sitting at 11-13, which brings me to 45.83%, while Sean is sitting at 13-8, which brings him to 61.9% on the year. Absolutely taking me out to the woodshed and fucking spanking my boots. But hey, shit happens in this sport, and we will bounce back, right? Right? Next up, we get to talk about an awesome card, a card that is taking place in Sydney, Australia, UFC 312. And UFC 312 kind of sucks, if I'm being honest. But we're starting it out in one of the most exciting, fun divisions. We got Hyung Sung Park, minus 225, representing team Sean Negron MMA, right? Yes, representing team Sean Negron. Going up against Niam Jargel Tumen Demberel, plus 190. I can't wait to hear you giving an offering back on that spelling. Um, as constructed, right? When I looked at this matchup, I think flyweight is always exciting as hell. So this fight should be a treat to watch. I'm a big fan, actually, of both these guys. I think they're very slick in their own unique ways, and I think more so than ever. Right? I'm looking at all these different divisions lately. I'm looking at specifically flyweights. Man, it is so refreshing, right? When you go from doing heavyweight tape and you go and look at a fucking flyweight tape, you look at someone like Mr. Tumen Demberel, like, hey, this guy doesn't have, he's nowhere near the top of the weight class. Well, guess what? If you could put this man's body in a heavyweight, I mean, his mind and skill in a heavyweight frame, he will be a top 5 heavyweight, like legitimately. But that just speaks to the skills of this weight class. Now, will that matter in this matchup? Probably not. I think Hyun Sung Park has a lot of bright moments in his career to look forward to. Obviously, getting the TKO win against Shannon Ross, that is not hard to do, which makes this fight a little bit more interesting than most people think. I think Tumen Demberel having that experience in his UFC debut obviously didn't go his way, but I think that was a fight that you could definitely learn a lot of things from. I think ultimately this matchup is really going to come down to two things. I think Hyung Sung Park is the more dynamic athlete in this weight class. And I think he has more tools to win more consistent minutes in this fight. So I am leaning towards Mr. Hyung Sung Park. Sean, that probably makes you feel good.
It would make me feel good if I felt that this fight was happening, because as of late, it looks like this fight was canceled. But
Wait.
it,
It was canceled just now? When was this?
it does look like this fight was just canceled. I'm not even going to lie to you as you were talking.
You're lying, bro. What was the alert? Can you we're
I'm
breaking
looking
news
at it
here.
now. It says Tumen Demberel weight cut issues. This fight is canceled.
You can't make this shit up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm mid breakdown.
That
You know
is
what's funny too?
crazy.
Right before we start the show, we're like, "Hey, at least none of the fucking fights fell out." Yeah,
Yeah, we literally
fucking
just said
wasted
that.
this tape. God damn it.
That is crazy that
Well, at
just
least,
happened.
yeah, I'm deleting that off the
I was
show.
this is perfect for like TikTok because you know what's so funny? I was just looking at this fight and I was like I'm trying to change the page to go to Two Men Dembarel and I'm like, who was his last fight? Let me check this. Wait, how come I can't click on him? And then it's like this fight's canceled. I'm like, no, it's not. And then I look it up. Two Men Dembarel weight cut issue. This fight is canceled.
That's
Sounds
fucking
perfect. Well,
hilarious.
if that's not a perfect way to
Segue.
look at this card, uh, I don't know what is.
You summed it up, God damn it. We move on to the lightweight division. Our first fight of the night, officially. We've got Mr. Quinlan Salkilld, the hometown hero, minus 625, going up against Anshul Jubli plus 470. Now, Sean, since the first fight didn't exist, I'll take the reins again. We've got Anshul Jubli representing your boy over here. Which makes me sad, but not as sad as these numbers suggest. I just got to be real here, right? Let's not act like he didn't win every minute of the fight against Mike Breeden until the third round. Like, let's not act
Yeah.
like that did not happen. I think there's nothing on the tape that suggests that Mr. Salkilld should be the highest favored fighter on this card. With all due respect, now, am I picking Anshul Jubli to win? No, I'm not. But I think skills pay the bills, and this is not that wide of a fight. I think ultimately, especially in the striking ranges, I think Anshul Jubli, despite being the smaller athlete here, I think he could do some damage on the feet because I think Quinlan is someone that is very accepting of the firefight. But ultimately, I think durability wise and mental edge, you got to give it to Quinlan. Obviously, looking much better throughout his career as he won some regional titles and then eventually made his Dana White Contender Series debut. Obviously, an amazing fight. But as we look at this matchup, I think it's very easy for people to write off Jubli. I don't agree with that. I think this is really probably should be somewhere around minus 300. Now, that's half of the difference, right? Maybe not a big deal. But either way, I agree with the bookies. I'm going with Quinlan. It doesn't make me happy, but I don't think either of these guys are top 15 material. Is that crazy to say?
No, I don't think it's crazy to say at all. I think for Quinlan, I need to see more, and for Jubli, like we just talked about again, the Breeden fight, that sucks because I was high on Jubli, and I think you ended up taking him in Dynasty, right? I have to check the page, but I'm pretty sure you have him. And you know, it's so funny how that works, right? You're so high on a person, and then it turns out like it could backfire so quick on one punch, on one little cross, and now you know he's looking at it as a plus 470 over here, and I think those odds are crazy, but I also think, you know, and for me, I look at Quinlan, strong out of the Dana White Contender Series, very well-rounded fighter. I think his key to victory for me is the cardio, the takedowns, and his precision striking. I think when he excels with his reach, using the jabs, body kicks, you know, even some teeps, I think he's able to control the range and really frustrate opponents. And I think that's how he goes into every fight, is trying to frustrate the opponent, keeping him on the back foot. I think obviously his biggest strength is probably his takedown ability, which, you know, against Jubli, I think that will be very crucial. I think Jubli really struggles with defending the takedown. You know, also, you know, I talk about this every time. Jubli hasn't fought, and I felt in like 14, 15 months. I feel like he lacks some of the standout skills that you want to see in a top 15 type fighter. His reach disadvantage and his vulnerability to getting hit with getting punched, but also his wrestling is going to be really significant. And I think that's why the odds are the way that they are. I think because of that, it could be a very one-sided fight early. I would really like to see Jubli have a rebound performance because even though he was great, you know, obviously it ends up him getting knocked out. I would love to see something crazy where he could kind of turn the page and show that he's for the last 15 months he's become a better wrestler and more of a all around fighter. But for me, I feel from what I've seen, I think this is one where Quinlan's just going to dominate, and I expect him to honestly win by TKO with ground and pound in the second round.
Ooh, I love the specific prediction. We never ask of it, but Sean always delivers, ladies and gentlemen. I give him every now and then when I'm feeling real confident, but you always deliver on that front. Next up, we move on to the welterweight division. We got Jonathan Micallef, the hometown hero, going up against someone that trains with the Kiwi, with the Aussies, right? So interesting little beef there. We got Kevin, Mr. Jousset, minus 210, representing Team Sean, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's right. Quick turnaround after his last fight against one Brian Battle. So Sean, you get to lead the dance. How you feeling about this welterweight
In
tilt?
I honestly am a big fan of Kevin. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just one of those that look highly on him. Him and Jack Jenkins. I don't know why. I've always just been super high on these guys that they can really turn it into something. Um, and I still look at them as young guys, even if they're not. But for me, I look at Kevin as a very versatile striker, very active with the leg kicks, Muay Thai style. Solid takedown defense. I think he can use his judo here to reverse takedowns very well. He's done that in the past. I think that's probably one of the keys to him being why in his in this fight and why the odds are the way that they are. I think for him it's just going to be kicks and boxing, just straight up kicks to the body, kind of pinpoint where you're going with your punches, and just keep closing the distance. He does such a really good job at pushing forward. Well, I do think for someone like Jonathan, another guy who really excels at closing the distance, skilled grappler, I think he can find a way to take this fight to the ground. But I feel like he's more of a one-dimensional type fighter in his approach. And for me, I think with Kevin, when he's more well-rounded, I think that's the difference. Is when you can find a way to stop someone's one trick pony. You can find a way to use your advantages even if you're not the best at them, in your well-rounded game, and find a way to pick them apart. And I do think this one, honestly, I have Kevin winning this via knockout in the third round because I think after a while, I think he's just going to continue to pick him apart. And I think Jonathan's going to have a really tough time by the ninth or 10th minute mark. That sitting on the stool going into round three is going to be very troubling. And I think Kevin just continues to pick him apart slowly until he eventually drops.
I don't think you are bullish on being high on Kevin Jousset. I remember kind of hating on you being able to be the one to draft him because I like his skills too, and I think he has a lot of room to improve as well. I think Jonathan has a very interesting style, though. I think especially in this matchup, what really worries me for Kevin Jousset is even when he's having success at range for whatever reason, he really gets mucked up in the clinch a lot. Like he finds himself there even by his own will, right? Like he brings himself to the clinch a lot of the times. And don't get me wrong, he's slick there as well. But I think in this matchup specifically, that could bring about the danger zone, right? You're bringing yourself closer to the phases in which Jonathan wants to operate. Now, I think ultimately Kevin Jousset will be the stronger one in those tie-ups, right? The longer athlete as well. So I think he's going to be in a better position to deal with those takedown threats, so to speak. But I think this is going to be a really interesting test for Jousset in the way of can you go against your instincts, right? Can you, as an MMA fighter, sift out what would be the best path to victory and then stick to that? I think if he does that, he should run away with it the same way you laid it out. But I think this one is more of a decision kind of fight. I think Jonathan's super tough as well, and I agree, kind of shies away a little bit, but I think he has enough um, doggedness in his game to really prevent himself, right, from getting to those finishing scenarios. So I think this is going to be a fun fight. I think it's really up to Kevin Jousset to kind of tame down his own instincts a little and find the spots to win. But I'm going with Mr. Juicy as well. Next up, we move on to a fighter that I find fascinating. We got Rongzhu plus 200 going up against Cody Steele minus 225. Would you believe me if I told you that Rongzhu has been in the UFC for 5 years?
Yes.
Now, would you believe me if I told you he's only 24 years old? That shit blew my head up when I was looking at it. I think especially recently he's been on the unfortunate end of some tough matchmaking, right? Ran into Bahamondes, and then right after that, got linked up with Chris Padilla, who wasn't heralded, right? But turns out to be a pretty solid UFC fighter. So uh, I liked Rongzhu's game for a really long time. I think he obviously has all the potential to grow into a fighter. And I think even if he loses here, he shouldn't be cut from the UFC just because of the talent he has, like his raw talent, the wins he got. Man, you see it. Like he's an explosive athlete out there. The decision making as a young fighter has been the problem in his career. And I think in this matchup specifically, it's a hard thing to overcome against a fucking exciting prospect in Cody Steele, man. This guy, in my opinion, has it all, right? But specifically where he is so good is obviously his experience in the grappling and all of the accomplishments he's had along the way. I think Cody Steele is someone to watch out for big time in this division at 155. But I think this also is a uniquely tough matchup because I think Rongzhu is somebody who, if he can put it all together in on the right night, he can spark you out there. And obviously that's a tough situation to be going against here. But I think ultimately the decision making is going to catch up to Rongzhu in this fight. And I think Cody Steele is just going to be a step ahead of him, even if it's not necessarily in direct grappling exchanges, but just in positioning, finding the better spots in the cage to bring him to the areas of advantages that he wants to exploit. So give me Cody Steele.
Yeah, for me, I'm picking Cody Steele as well, but I think this fight is a lot closer than people think. I'm always going to pay attention to anyone who in the Contender Series can go out and get a body shot knockout. That I feel like it's becoming more and more less and less frequent, and seeing something like that is always going to raise the eyebrows of everybody watching. And I look at him as a very, very skilled Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter. Like he really is. I would say not next level, but he's like next up, right? He's like what you look at as, give it 3 or 4 years, this guy's going to be in everyone's conversation, because I think he's really there. His resilience is one of the best that I've seen for such an up and coming prospect. He's got great power, great volume. It's really actually impressive, and he's got a better cardio than I was expecting. For such a young kid. For me, I think the issue for what would you say, Rongzhu, is that how you pronounce his name? The issue with that, and I know who he is. I'm terrible pronouncing names for people who are watching this for the first time. Is he always had a hard time making weight. That's why he got out of the UFC, I feel. Like he had close fights, but he was constantly missing weight. I think it was back-to-back fights. It might have even been 3 straight fights, if I remember. It was constantly missing weight, and then you're back to the road to the UFC, and that's great. I'm glad he's back. I just think someone like Cody Steele is going to take that and use it as an advantage. Rongzhu is a very good grappler. I'm not saying that he's not. He's good at the striking exchange. He knows how to stand in there with them and go, aggressive. I just feel like Steele's power and his cardio combined are going to be a little too much for Rongzhu when it gets to later in the rounds. I do think this fight goes the distance, but a part of me feels that this fight could find its way to the ground. I think Steele's takedown skills are pretty top notch already at this level in his career, and I could find a way where he starts getting very aggressive with the heavy punches, finds his way to get his grappling involved, take him down, and get a submission victory. I would not be surprised. But to me, I think this is a good matchup between two young guys who have totally different career trajectories to start. And I think Cody Steele will find his way on top and to pause in this first matchup. So this one I think goes to unanimous, but it's going to be a good fight.
Yes, sir. I love this matchup. Can't wait to see how it all plays out. Next up, we move on to a very famous brother of a famous fighter in the UFC. We got Colby, get down with the thickness, coming in on short notice, plus 295, going up against Aleksandre Topuria, minus 350. Do I go first here? I just went first, right? Hey,
No,
it's
this is
your
me. This is
turn.
me.
It's your turn, brother.
Is it me? Or and I'll let you answer this really quickly. Do you think the odds are this way because of the last name?
1,000%. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just making sure that okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's we're both on the same page there. I think obviously with the last name makes his fight a lot more crazy. So if you're out there watching this, putting a couple bucks on Colby isn't the worst thing in the world here. I think this could be a big win for certain people. Um, for me, I think this is a really good fight. I'm kind of hoping that we do get to see Volkanovski and Ilya also there in the corners, which is what I've said this to you off air, and I'm gonna raise this question to you for when it's your turn. But have we ever seen two guys who are about to fight each other for the belt corner against one another right before that, or ever before? I don't know if we've ever seen that, but I'll let you answer when it's your turn. I just can't remember a time. Um, But like I said, I think for Topuria, I think he's very aggressive, heavy punches, and a lot of clinch work. I think that's going to be his bread and butter to try to get to Colby. Colby coming in on short notice here, I think going to be an improvement, a big upgrade, I guess, in talent wise. But again, I think it's like that because we're a little clouded on what the last name shows. Topuria has been in the news a lot about trying to get his brother in here, and now that he's here, I'm excited to see what this brings. I'm excited to see what this last name could potentially do for the UFC game. Wow, for me, it's for Colby, head movement, all head movement, very unorthodox. I think it makes it very difficult for fighters to find him, to track him down, to try to aim for the head, because I think he moves quickly. Like we just talked about, not to compare him to Dominick Cruz, but I felt like Cruz did a really good job at that as well. Constantly moving, made it very hard to hit. And very unorthodox style. It's going to be very difficult to track, like I was saying. I think his guard is going to be the only vulnerable part in his game, and I think that's going to be where Topuria is going to really take advantage. So for me, I'm not impressed by either of these two guys yet, but to me, I'm actually going to pick Colby to win this fight. I think this is going to be a crazy fight and a lot of how do I put this? It's going to turn heads. I think because of obviously who's in the corners, but I think everyone kind of looks at Colby as just kind of coming in on short notice here. Oh, Topuria, look at the last name. This guy's going to dominate. I'm actually kind of hoping for something crazy to happen here. And, I heard Adesanya talk about Colby. I've heard Folk talk about him. And I think this kid could be real deal. He's a killer. He goes out. He does not freaking die. He constantly goes out on the sword every time, and I think we're gonna see that in this fight, and it's gonna be awesome. And I'm gonna go with
I
Colby.
fucking love it, man. Going out on a whim early, I think you really set this fight up really well. I think the biggest part that actually gives me pause here as well is I think Colby's fought the better competition too, right? Like you look at the guys that don't get me wrong, Topuria's starching them, right? But if you look at their records, right, they're absolutely abysmal or not even sometimes not even existent, right? So yeah, this is a real tough fight to cap. I think, especially because it's a short notice. I might have tended to agree with you if it wasn't short notice. I think Colby's actually better when he can be well rounded, right? When he can show the extent of his skills. And I think it's going to be harder to do that just given you're coming in here on short notice. I agree with you though, man. I think this should be like a minus 140, minus plus 120 kind of fight. Like there's no reason why it should be this wide. But I also, on that same token, think if you're just, and this isn't just because of his brother, right? This is just me being real. If we're talking about athletic potential, like I think Alexandre Topuria has the potential. If any of these guys are going to show up and look radically different, I think it's going to be him compared to their last fights. Um, and I guess that's what's pushing me over the edge here. I'm going to go with the hype. I'm going to go with Topuria. But you set it up beautifully, right? I'm looking more forward to the fucking minute after the first round than I am the opening bell. I think that's going to be high theater no matter what goes on. But I'm saying this. If Aleksandre Topuria puts it on Colby Thicknesse and he survives to go into round two, I am live betting the Thicknesse. We getting down with the Thicknesse, ladies and gentlemen.
Have you seen these? A champion versus I guess the uh, I guess former champion or number one contender. Have you ever seen them corner one another? Well, I mean,
I've
corner against
never
each other. I
seen
don't
it
think I've ever seen
when
that.
they were scheduled. Like, I've seen it happen and then they fought after, but I've
Yeah,
never
yeah,
seen it,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
when they were scheduled. So that's a great shout by you.
yeah.
And
I
who
think
knows?
that's
Because right at this point, isn't that fight not happening right now anyway? The
I think
Volk,
it's gonna happen. I think everyone knows it too, and I wouldn't be surprised if they announced it because they're in Australia. You know, I think
mhm,
they've just been waiting to announce it, and I think you found the perfect venue to do it, especially with both of them there. And that's what
mhm.
I'm kind of hoping that they don't take the moment away from Colby and Aleksandre by promoting that because I think no matter what, at the end of the fight, you know how everyone comes into the cage, someone's going to be announced the winner, regardless of whatever happens. I don't want the UFC, and I know they're going to do it to put them face to face, like they're facing next, like and to take it away from whoever wins this fight, because Ilya and Volk are going to be there, and I know they're friends now or whatever they pretend to be, but I just don't want them to take that moment away from these guys who are really trying to make a name for themselves, and they're in the UFC. So, I think they're going to announce it in that moment that fight's happening, but it's going to be a great fight regardless.
I love it. Next up, we get the pleasure of moving on to a fight that is near and dear to my guy Sean. We got Wang Kong minus. Hey, this shit hitting right now. Minus 395, going up against Bruna Brazil plus 333. Sean, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm gonna be brief with you here. I think one of these fighters is an MMA fighter. I think the other one is a kickboxer. So give me Bruna Brazil plus 333.
Wow. Okay, good. You know what? I'm actually kind of glad you said something because I feel like this shit is so inflated because of how of who she is in the face to face and how she kind of, is like a character, which is great. Hey, listen, promote yourself. I love that. Do what you got to do. But for me, I felt like we kind of saw her get exposed like a little bit. I feel like with Kong, I feel like it's strong boxing. Grappling defense is completely untested. You're going up against Bruna Brazil, who's going to absolutely grapple you. And so we're going to see a full on grappler. And I think at the UFC level versus someone who's not. So for me, honestly, I picked Kong to win because I think she's got the striking. But I would not be surprised if she's fucking being ragdolled in there 3 minutes into this fight, and it's absolutely mayhem, and it's it's curtains for Wang Kong. So I am picking Wang to win because she's on my dynasty, but I would not be surprised in any way. This is I 100% would bet on this fight for Bruna Brazil to absolutely take it.
Yep. Shout out to the Fighting Nerds team. I think all those things, right? Being a part of that team, coming off of a big upset in her last fight as well, right? I don't know. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of that team in general. And I just think in a matchup like this, you cannot tell me that everyone doesn't see what you need to do, right? As a strategy. And I trust the Fighting Nerds to try to explode that. I said explode, exploit, whatever the fuck. I can't speak, but it's okay. Next up, we move
Exploit.
on to the lightweight division. We've got Tom Nolan plus 125 going up against Vyacheslav Borshov minus 120. Shout out to Slava Claus. Tom Nolan representing Team Sean once again. And this time he gets the pleasure of leading the dance. So why don't you tell me who you got?
Honestly, this is a tough one. This is probably in my top 2 or 3 toughest fight I had to do. I think this one's chaotic, very exciting. This one's gonna get the crowd going. I think Nolan is very well with his high accuracy and volume. I think he had. My biggest concern is his chin. I feel like once if you can clip it, it's a bad time. And for me, I feel like I think he was dropped in his last fight. Um, I know his height and his reach give him that advantage, but I feel like Borshev is just so explosive, and I feel like it's almost made for a certain moment to happen where you see Tom Nolan drop, and I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen, but I think this fight's going to be crazy. I think both are going to be swinging. I think it's going to be very aggressive from Borshev early. He's going to try to use some impressive combinations in the first couple minutes. I think that's what makes him extremely dangerous. But if this fight can make it to 15 minutes, then I could see this as a very even style matchup. and I think that's why the odds are that way. I think if Borshev can actually find a way to, instead of headhunting all the time, find a way to be explosive toward the body, I think this is his fight all day. I think that's one of Tom Nolan's biggest weaknesses is the inability to block body shots. And for me, I think if Borshev can overcome that and find a way to be smart, I think it's going to be very tough for Nolan. But for me, I think despite Borshev's crazy threat that he offers in the first, 6, 7 minutes, like I just said, I do think that this fight's going to be a little bit more precise and clean and kind of technical from Tom Nolan's side, and I think he'll just do just enough more damage when it comes to points wise. That if Borshev can continue standing, I would be a little surprised. But my prediction is Tom Nolan by decision. But I would not be surprised, honestly, if Tom Nolan can find a way to knock out Borshev in the second round. So this is a very, very, very fun fight. This could go either way, and I really hope Borshev can exploit the fucking body. That's what I really hope for. But I think it's going to be a lot of heavy attacks, heavy, aggressive, impressive combinations that will lead to some counters by Tom if he can exploit that himself. And I think Tom does really well with the distance, and I think that will be just enough to get the job done.
Wow, Sean, look at that. Because we are in agreement. I think this fight is interesting for all the reasons you said. I think Vyacheslav Borshev's biggest downfall, in my opinion, is his willingness to just accept the fight that you're giving him, right? And I think for some fighters that can be a skill, but for someone that I think that really is relying on like making a change in these fights, I think Borshev could really benefit from being a little more assertive, but also a little less, right? And those are two things that don't usually go hand in hand. Um, I think when it comes to this fight, though, I actually am picking Tom Nolan to win by submission. I think ultimately it's going to come down to his superior grappling chops, in addition to some really, once again, just like you said, being either fully all in or fully all out. And I think the more he's able to frustrate Borshev by being on that outside, right? It might be a little bit boring, but he's going to force him to make a mistake that's ultimately going to lead to really advantageous positions, especially on the ground. And I think that'll eventually lead to a submission. So give me Tom Nolan. Next up, we move on. We got Jack Jenkins plus 190 going up against Gabriel Santos minus 200. I think Gabriel Santos is somebody who has also gotten the unfortunate end of the luck of the draw with the high level of competition he's faced so far in the UFC. Forgot to mention Jack Jenkins representing Team Sean over here. I will say that I think the odds here are kind of crazy, and they're not even that wide. I think this is a close fight, man. I think Jack Jenkins is an amazing talent. I agree with you there. I think he's really good at picking you apart, right? Taking your legs out from under you and just being super technical and frustrating in that way, right? He's going to force you to earn the shots that you land. And that's a rarity in MMA, man. Believe it or not. Most of the time, guys are there to be hit, man, not Jack Jenkins. I think really though, what separates Gabriel Santos in this fight and the reason why I'm picking him is I think he has a really strong grappling game in addition to his slick striking. And I think his ability to mix it up in this fight is going to be the difference. I think Jack Jenkins is going to be pretty linearly focused on this fight as far as chopping down Gabriel Santos. But I think Gabriel Santos should be able to mix it up in a way that gets him to win this fight. I think this is a really close fight, though. And once again, why I don't really feel sure about the odds. I like Gabriel Santos's I like, how do I say this? I think Jack Jenkins' skills, right, on the feet specifically, are much more advantageous in this weight class than Gabriel Santos's skills. But I think Gabriel Santos's skills are better for MMA development, if that makes sense. So I just feel like when it comes to this fight, I think Gabriel Santos is going to be a little bit more dynamic, and that's what's going to give him the edge. But I think something to look out for. the chinny chin chin, ladies and gentlemen. I think if the chin edge goes to anyone, I think it's going to be Jack Jenkins. So let's slow down here, guys. Let's make it calm. Give me a Gabriel Santos.
Yeah, for me, I think this is a really fun fight, and honestly, I'm picking Jenkins to win. I think this is one where I feel like people. I don't know if it's the odd makers. I don't know what it is. I feel like to me, Jenkins is kind of looked at as not as like a has been or a never was a sort of aspect. I feel like he's just so quickly like thrown to the wayside. Like, the fight against Mariscal, the injury, and that's why he lost. Like, granted, I felt like Mariscal was doing a great job in that fight. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that since that loss, it went from this guy was supposed to be the next best thing. Jack Jenkins is on the rise. Here he comes. And then that one loss, and I felt like people just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Like even the fight against Herbert Burns, and when he beats him, like people were like, "Yeah, it's Herbert Burns." Like, Herbert's, he's not the same guy. He's not his brother. Whatever. And so, like, I feel like people just quickly look past him. And like I said to you before when we were doing the show earlier, I'm a big fan of Jenkins. I've always been. I just feel like he has such promise, and it's so quickly how I feel like I say this in so many UFC episodes that we do that people, it's like the second you lose, they immediately write you off like, yeah, he's done, he's garbage, and it's like it takes him almost like 4 wins to come back, and they're like, oh well, he was good the whole time, I knew it, and you're like, dude, I just heard you give up on him like the second he lost, like so for me, keeping the feelings like aside, I think Jenkins is better here. I just think he's got powerful leg kicks. His explosive wrestling is going to be a problem for someone like Santos. And Santos, obviously, we know, Muay Thai, reaching, technical striking. He's going to be very great background. I just think Jenkins has a strong boxing game that goes well with the explosive wrestling. And I think with Jenkins, it's just constant coming after you. It's hard coming after you all, the whole time as hard as he can, and he's got a great gas tank. It's like, I don't know, it's like brute force. It's just constant. It never ends until you go down. So I think Santos is a talented kickboxer, really great. I just think Jenkins is more well-rounded. He's got a way better skill set. I think his toughness is way stronger than Santos's upside here. And I think this is the underdog pick of the whole card. I think this is great. When I first saw these odds, I actually thought Jenkins was the favorite. So to see that he wasn't, I was like, oh, I'm absolutely. If I were to actually not have bad luck, I would bet on Jenkins to win, because I know the second I bet on Jenkins, somehow he'll lose in 6 seconds. Like the air will knock him out. So I'm not even gonna risk it. But if I was a betting man, I would pick Jenkins all day. There's like 3 fights here on this card that I would absolutely pick the underdog for, because I think their odds are a little crazy here. But I think this is one where Jenkins can really right the ship to where you're starting to think about him again. Beating someone like Gabriel Santos is not an easy fight whatsoever. So for him to take on Burns, beat him, take Santos, beat him, I think that gets you right back in this conversation of top 15, top 20. And I think he absolutely gets it done in exciting fashion.
Yeah, we need some new blood at featherweight. Hopefully, one of these guys can break through. I like this, man. We got 3 fights already where we're opposite again. So hopefully, I come out on the winning end of it this time. Next up, we move on to this is welterweight, right? Welterweight division. We got Jake Matthews -225 going up against Francisco Prado +200. Sean, you had the pleasure of leading the dance once again. How you feeling?
This is a good one. This is another good one. I said this last time Jake Matthews fought. I feel like this guy has been around forever, and he's still pretty young. So, for me, I love seeing this kind of turnaround of Jake Matthews. I feel like we've seen Matthews literally grow up in front of us. And these last couple years, I feel like he's become such a better, well-rounded fighter. He was known for his solid wrestling and his striking defense. I think everyone knew that from when he came up in the UFC. But I feel like he's done such a better job offensively that he's now starting to really slowly, but he's starting to slowly show that he can push forward in this division. I think he does a little bit of a lackluster job leaving his guard open, and that makes him open to a lot of powerful shots. If anyone that goes after him with like a heavy-handed approach and relies on big attacks, I think they can exploit that from Jake, because I feel like Jake can kind of leave that open. But I think his technical finesse is what will get the job done. At first, I looked at it as maybe that will go against him, but this is one where I feel Matthews can thrive under pressure here and really work against something like Prado's going to bring, which is neutralizing the power. So for me, I think Prado shows really great potential. I think for him, he's got a lot of athleticism, straight raw power, something you love to see. But I think I always say this: experience wins most of the time, and I think Matthews has one of the best experiences you can ask for at this level of the game. There's not that many people who have been here for as long as he has, and has been through the worst of the worst to the highest of the highs. So for me, I think experience and ability to stay composed under crazy, vicious shots, heavy shots coming after you. I think he's going to do a lot better with that. Now that he's, later in his career, he'll be a little bit more strategic. And for me, I think that'll pose challenges for Prado when it gets to round 2. And I think Prado might find a way to crack him early, maybe even win round 1. But I think Matthews is one that's going to stay composed here and use Prado's aggression against him in the later rounds and later in round 2 and later into 3, and find a way to win this unanimous decision. So to me, I think this is a close fight, but I go UD for Matthews.
I like this fight for a lot of reasons, right? You already stole a couple of them for me, but to be brief here, I think Jake Matthews is a real test study, right, on the idea of what it means to come into the UFC as a young fighter. Um, his career trajectory at some point was looked at almost like a Rory McDonald type, right? Somebody that could do it all, someone that could beat you striking, beat you grappling. And along the way, I think we've seen a couple chinks in the armor. I think specifically with his chin has been the biggest issue. And then obviously sometimes just getting outworked. And I think in this matchup, I'm going to be picking Jake Matthews, but this is a trap fight. Like, this is 100% a trap fight. I think Francisco Prado, given how young he is, and like you said, the athletic talent he has, I'm going to be real. I think he'll be better at 155. I think obviously that fight against Zell Huber, super fucking close, tooth and nail. And I think that's a loss that ages gracefully, right? Not many of those do. But I think ultimately when it comes to this matchup, Francisco Prado is going to have to develop in a way that someone at his age very much so can, right? But he needs to develop big time in order to reach this level of competition and meet it head to head. I think especially when it comes to his grappling defense and grappling instincts, right? He's someone that's really looking to go out there and put it on you. But even when it comes to the striking ranges, he doesn't really have range tools, right? He's just someone that walks into range and hopes that you're going to be there to swing with them. I think someone like Jake Matthews is equipped to really take apart guys like that, right? Because he can take you down. So why would I even fuck around with you? Like, yeah, I could jab you, etc. But once you're going to start throwing in combination, I'm going to be in on your legs, right? And that's ultimately where I think this fight is won. So give me Jake Matthews. I don't like it, right? I think Francisco Prado's a dynamic athlete, and I think regardless of what happens here, he's someone who should still be in the UFC and has a lot to learn. But I'm going with Jake the Snake. Give me Jake Matthews. Next up, we move on to the light heavyweight division. We got Jimmy Crute plus 136 going against Rodolfo Bellato minus 145. Obviously, this is an interesting matchup for a lot of reasons, right? Jimmy Crute coming off of a 2-year layoff after getting his whole shit broke against Jamal Hill. That fight feels like ages ago, doesn't it? And it was only 2 years ago. Rodolfo Bellato is in a really interesting point in his career too. I think obviously has faced losses, big time losses, both of them to the same guy. But at the same time, looks like a promising athlete at this division. Sometimes that's really all that matters. I think this fight is very interesting for a lot of the same reasons as the last one. I think Jimmy Crute can come in here and look like a brand new fighter, and we won't be surprised, right? This is someone that's very, very young still, despite being in the UFC for a while now as well. And also like a blue chip prospect in a lot of ways. Like I think this is someone who has grappling chops, has some finishing power on the feet, despite not being probably as technical there. And I think Rodolfo Bellato's there to be hit, man, if anything. So I think this is a rough matchup. Um, but I'm ultimately going to stick with my guy representing my dynasty team. I'm going to pick Mr. Bellato. I'm not very excited about this fight. Like, I feel like I'm going to be watching this fight through my fingers, right? With bated breath, because this is a dangerous fight. And I think it could end very easily if Adolfo starts getting clipped. But I think ultimately he's going to be a little bit more slick, and that's what's going to get the job done. So give me Adolfo Bellato. And if he showed anything in his last win, that motherfucker's tough, bro. That motherfucker could take a beating. So with that being said, we move on. I'm joking, right? Go ahead, Sean. How you feeling?
Yeah, I think for me this is interesting. I think this is one where for Jimmy, we've seen him, like we said, he's been around for a good minute. I feel like it's we're on like year 7 now, right? It's he's been around a good minute. Started off well, and maybe what you could say. Maybe looking at his thing right now, now that I'm looking at it, you could say he might have met his match. But it's also been almost 2 years, right, since he's last fought, a year and a half, I should say, of inactivity, and maybe that works well for a guy in a 3-fight losing streak and really hasn't won his last 4. Uh, but also it could definitely backfire. Ring rust could. It's one of those where people will use that in any sort of way you look at it. In the positive of, yeah, I lost 3-4 straight, but I needed this time off. I feel better than ever. I'm coming back. This is gonna be the best version of me. Or it could be yeah, I've lost, 3 out of, I haven't won my last 4 fights. I needed a year and a half off because it ain't gonna look better for me, but I just need that time because it's been nothing but, knockouts for me or chokes. So I needed that time. And I'm honestly a fan of Bellato. I am. I think Bellato, with just one fight under his belt, has shown solid ground and pound in just in his debut. We know face lower competition, but I think he has a striking advantage and with his power punches. And I think it's the fact of the unknown. It's the unknown of how limited his experience is in the UFC, of what he really could be. I think like with Jimmy, we kind of know that his grappling is going to try to be the X factor and trying to nullify some Bellato striking. And for me, I think it's the long layoff of uh, of of Jimmy and Bellato's reach advantage that are going to really be my X factors in this. I think it makes it a very tough fight to predict either way because you have experience versus non-experience. A guy who could potentially be on his way out versus a guy who's trying to stay in. Um, I think Jimmy has all the skills and all the experience and everything possibly given to him to win, but I think that maybe time is not on his side, and maybe his skills are not on his side in 2025. And for me, I'm picking Bellato via second round knockout. I think this is one where Jimmy might be on the way out, and I hope that's not the case for him. But I feel like we've seen the best of Jimmy Crute, and I feel like for me, this is just one of those situations where you saw a guy plateau, and you hate to see it because you just hate to see, like we saw in the last card, where you see a guy and you saw him at his peak, but you didn't realize it was his best until it's after the fact. And I feel like that could be a situation here for Jimmy. So I'm picking Bellato by knockout, but should be a pretty good fight.
Yes, sir. It'll be fun, if nothing else. We move on to the heavyweight division. Speaking of fun, right? We got some big motherfuckers throwing big bungalows. We got Justin Tafa. That's a bad man, ladies and gentlemen. Plus 135 going up against Talisson Teixeira. Minus 135. That man does not, every time he speaks, bro, it does not add up with my brain. Like that cannot be the voice coming out of this gargantuan man. But you go first, brother. Why don't you take it? Who you got?
If I remember correctly, this is the one. This is his first fight out of taking his brother's fight. For Junior. He stepped in last second and took that fight. So I don't really look at the fight against Carl Williams as a as a fight that I would match him up against it in a way of like, oh, well, he looked like shit, or, oh, look, he is the best version of himself. I think this one honestly is a towering fight. I think that's the best way to explain it. I feel like Teixeira, big guy. I think how tall? I have to look this up. How tall is Teixeira? If I looked at this right. Hold on, before I know, I'm slowing the game down here.
6'7", if I'm not
6'7". Yeah, I figured he was a tall motherfucker. So you got probably a good 7, 8, 9 inch height advantage here, and probably his reach is probably around 9 to 10 inches himself. Pause. So this is one where this could be a crazy matchup for someone like Justin, because it's hard. It's hard to be the smaller guy and fight bigger opponents like that with much longer reaches and longer limbs, and can kind of keep you at whatever bay he wants to keep you in. He controls the distance now. You just have to close in, and we all know the Tafas are great at just being big brawler motherfuckers who just rush and can get real close and just land some crazy shot that has you waking up 2 weeks from now. We've seen it. These guys are incredible. I think this is one where Teixeira is the more intriguing prospect here. I think Tafa's the exciting one, him and his brother, and I think that's why he's on the main card, third fight here, because of the excitement these two brothers bring. But I think this is a fight really for me that I pay attention to is Teixeira ready for higher competition? I think if Teixeira can show that he can handle Tafa with ease, I think now you could start looking at him being a legitimate contender / prospect right now. I think his knockout ability is what makes him dangerous in any fight for Tafa. I think Teixeira does a really good job with the counter, and I think if you can exploit someone like Tafa's sloppiness when he's just throwing with all that power and aggression, I think Teixeira could do really well with the counter punching. So I would not be surprised if Teixeira catches Tafa sleeping here with one of the counters, because Tafa can land a crazy powerful right hand. But to me, I think this one is just all technical versus all power and just brute strength. And I think this would be a fight that I'd be very, very honestly disappointed and surprised if Teixeira doesn't come out with a dominant victory here over Tafa.
Great shout, but I completely disagree with you. I think
I like it.
Taliesin Teixeira has shown that he is not his physical attributes, and he's shown he's willing to get in there and muck it up with you. And I think that tendency alone is just going to get him killed. I'm going Justin Tafa, round 1 knockout, and I feel very convicted about this one. But I love this one because it's very reminiscent. Shout out. Not as extreme in the height difference, but very reminiscent of one Mark Hunt versus Stefan Struve. We saw how that one went.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, that fight. Stefan
Yep.
Struve. I couldn't think of his name. Stefan Struve. Yep.
Yep. I think Taliesin Teixeira, while has all the attributes to be a phenomenal fighter at heavyweight, just completely says, fuck that. Let's go. Let's brawl, and just lets guys in his range. Doesn't really, I mean, obviously he throws out the front kick. He has range tools, but doesn't really make it a focus of his game. He wants to go out there and fight you like most heavyweights do, right? In close, trying to get you to not, and he's shown too, which is the craziest part. He's shown problems in those firefights, right? So you think, hey, what the fuck? You're getting clipped here. Let's address this. But yeah, this is the moment you get the wake-up call when you get waken up in the back. I gotta say though, Sean, I couldn't wait for this moment, right? Because the 2 next fights we're gonna talk about are in a completely different stratosphere than the rest of the fights we've spoken about already, right? There's some fights we've spoken about that I'm excited for, that I'm looking forward to. These next 2 fights are absolutely phenomenal. We got the champ, Zhang Weili, minus 105, going up against the uncrowned champ. Some people are saying the most, probably the fighter we've heard about being in this scenario for the longest. Tatiana Suarez, looking to become a champ, plus 105. We got to pick them, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, all odds brought to you by Best Fight Odds. I love that I get the the first refreshing talk here because I got a lot to say. God damn it! I think Tatiana Suarez looks just like the great Khali, and I can't get it out of my mind, right? It's very offensive, but I can't get it out of my mind, ladies and gentlemen. I love that she has linked up with Patchy Mix because I think their styles really benefit each other so much. I think we've seen her chokes have gotten way nastier since they have linked up as training partners and, of course, as fiancés, right? How beautiful. Congratulations to the family. Obviously, Tatiana Suarez is just absolutely nails, right? In the face, her pressure. Shout out to Robbie Fox and those guys at Barstool. I remember a long time ago, one of her first fights in the UFC coming off a tough after she won, tweeting out a picture of her like with the American flag flying and the caption being America, we got ourselves a Khabib, right? And literally like that, very apt, right? Based on the way she fights. I love her style. I don't know how she makes this weight class. Legitimately, right? Big eye on the scales here. I think obviously that's going to be her biggest. Some would argue that's going to be her biggest fight here. I love her skills, and I think it's hard to match her skills in this division, but in any division, just because of how high level her grappling is. Like if there's someone I look forward to being like a double champ, if there's anyone I could point to, is Tatiana Suarez. You see me, I'm tipping my hand a little bit here, right? Shout out to Zhang Weili. I think what makes her so strong is how sturdy she is and how, honestly, unheralded she is, right? She started this fight opened as a huge favorite, like minus 200 favorite. And the odds have significantly flipped since then, obviously, given that they're at this pick'em position. Some bookies have Tatiana Suarez as the favorite outright, which I think is a little insane because if we're being honest here, Zhang Weili is the only one of these two fighters who is an MMA fighter, right? No disrespect. I love Tatiana Suarez's game, right? But her striking has a lot to be desired. And especially in a matchup like this, super dangerous. I love Zhang Weili's striking too because it's built to fight grapplers like Tatiana Suarez. How, you might ask? Shout out to Luke Thomas. This is a way of thinking that he introduced me to. Zhang Weili has high strike variance, but low output. So every time she's throwing something different, right? It's not the same thing, but she's not necessarily throwing in combination. I think that style is really going to benefit here against someone like Tatiana Suarez because she's going to be at range a lot. She's going to find herself in a position where, hey, I can hit you, right? Like, we can do this and I can hit you. And a lot of the times, Tatiana Suarez is not thinking about hitting you. I think that's the next development of her game, really focusing on her striking, because I think she is just such a good athlete at this division, especially that she could really hurt a lot of women if she was willing to go forward on her skills in that way. I think ultimately, though, this fight is a lot closer than people are giving it credit for. And I'm going to be picking Zhang Weili here, right? I know I duped you a little bit. I think ultimately she has a strength that not a lot of fighters have at this weight class. And I think it gives me hope that, hey, maybe she might get dominated for a round or two. But coming out of that round, I think she has more room to adjust to Tatiana Suarez's skills. And I think if there's any gap that is the widest, I think it's Zhang Weili's striking and Tatiana Suarez's striking. So you know what? I think Zhang Weili has a tendency to carry some of the fights in her last couple of matchups, but I think there's going to be a level of danger here that's going to require a little bit more. I'm going to go Zhang Weili by knockout, 4th round.
I actually have it Zhang Weili knockout in 3rd round. I think this fight would have been fucking nails if this was a full Tatiana Suarez. I think if she wasn't, the injuries didn't catch up to her again, and basically being out for, I can't see it here, but I feel like it's been 15 months, 18 months since her last fight against Andrade. That's tough, and it's so like. It's funny because you can look at that and go, why would you give someone a title fight if they've been injured for 18 months, whatever. But you also look at Suarez and you're like, it's so long deserved. Like, if she didn't have these injuries, she would have had a title fight years ago. And it's just like we talked about with Cruz. It's just Cruz was able to become a champion and have his type of career in Hall of Fame. Suarez just had the career kind of taken from her. Half her career was taken in her prime due to these injuries, and it's like I feel like she can't escape them. And for me, I think Suarez, you explained it really well right when we started. Is the what's next in her game and developing is sort of that striking and going after and imposing a more well-rounded, bringing the striking to her fighting. I feel like she doesn't do that. It's more about just grapple wrestling. And I feel like when you're Zhang Weili, I know it's going to be tough. Tatiana's going to take you down. It's going to happen. She's incredible. She is the American Khabib. But I do feel that Zhang Weili has faced the best of the best. She's been doing this for the longest. Like she's faced Jan, she's faced Lemos. Like even the second fight against Rose, I really did think Rose is my favorite fighter. I thought Rose lost that fight. Beating Carla Esparza easy, which is one of my favorite fights of all time, because she lost again, and beating Joanna twice in one of the best female fights of ever. That first Joanna won is one of the best, if not the best, female fight of all time. So I think Zhang Weili has been here. She's constantly proving that she is the best of the best. And I think in this fight, honestly, if she wins this, I wouldn't be surprised if she wants to try for double champ status. And I feel like I wish Tatiana was at 100%, and maybe she is right now. But I just feel like it hurts me because I feel like Tatiana could have been something so special. So special. And I'm not just trying to push her to the wayside like she's got no shot. I think this fight's going to be great. I think early on Tatiana's going to look super dangerous and taking Zhang Weili down. We've seen Zhang Weili taken down against Rose Namajunas in the second fight and have a really difficult time getting up. And that's how I kind of look at this fight with Tatiana. Tatiana's way better than Rose was in the ground game. And this is a way different story. I just don't know which Suarez is showing up 18 months later from her last fight. They tried to book her twice in 2024. She was injured both times. And one's in February of last year, and one was just 2 or 3 months ago. So it's it's tough. It's tough to see which Suarez you're getting. The one that came back, I hope. Or is it the one that's, again, still with the nagging injuries trying to prove that she could be a champion? So I think Zhang Weili is the experience here of facing the best of the best is just going to be a little too much when it gets to rounds 2 and 3. I think Zhang Weili is going to come in full force on trying to stop the takedown. She knows it's the Ronda Rousey game. Just avoid getting into this grappling fucking matchup. Don't try to grapple with her. Try to avoid. Keep your distance. And I think honestly, by middle round 3, even round 4, like you said, I think this turns into a very one-sided fight, and I could see a situation where Zhang Weili does not let off of the gas pedal. She's got incredible cardio, and I think her striking is just going to be way too much for Suarez coming back after 18 months or whatever, how many months, and it's going to be a very one-sided fight after 10 minutes. So for me, I would love to have seen this fight, a couple months from now after Suarez had another fight, but I think that is the demise of Suarez's title shot here, and I'm going to go with Zhang Weili.
I love it. It always scares me whenever we're on the same page about these things, because I'm like, this is going to be the one, right? I know he's not going to be thinking this way. And then you're like, yeah, same. And I'm like, oh, shit. I thought I was on one here, God damn it. But yeah, I think this fight is super close, though, and I won't be surprised if either of these ladies win super easy. Right? Like if they make it look super easy, and we're here like, damn, we look stupid as hell. Tatiana just choked her out in a couple minutes. But yeah, I love this fight for everything about it. Just styles make fights. And this is going to be, no matter what happens here, it's going to be so tense, right? Every time they're on the outside, because we know Zhang could hurt her. And then every time they get inside, because we know Tatiana's in her wheelhouse. So it's going to be a real thrilling fight to watch. But give us Zhang. Next up, we move on to the main event, ladies and gentlemen, a main event that could have happened anywhere, but for some reason it's happening here in Australia. We got Dricus Du Plessis -200. Where your coach at? Let me get a kill. going up against the number one contender, Sean Strickland, in a rematch of what was a very interesting title fight. Plus 180, the return on Sean Strickland. The man shares in your namesake. And I need to add, because I didn't mention this, I have Zhang Weili on my team, and Sean has Tatiana Suarez. And in this matchup, we're going head to head again because he has Dricus Du Plessis, and I have Sean Strickland. So why don't you tell me about your brother in namesake against Dricus, whatever you want to call him. Let's do it. Who you got?
Honestly, I kind of wonder whether the UFC is doing this on purpose, on why they can't give Sean a title fight in America. This guy has had 3 title fights now, and it's all been out of the States. He won it against Adesanya in Australia. He lost it in Canada to Dricus, and now here we are back in Australia. So I'm convinced they're doing it to him on purpose because this guy's a madman. But you know what? This is a good fight. It is. I think this is one of those very weird and unorthodox fights still. And honestly, I'm a big fan of Sean Strickland and his fight style. I think people find it very boring and don't like it, but I love it. I really do. I love that defensive sort of style and just pick him apart slowly. Sometimes it's just winning by points, and Sean Strickland does that well. But I'm not taking anything away from DDP at all. I'm not. Dude, his fights have been so fun to watch ever since the Brunson fight, even the Darren Till fight. Getting Darren Till, I think that was Darren Till's last fight anyway. That dude was on the way out. But Brunson couldn't even lift his arms at the end of round 2. He didn't even know where he was. I felt bad. I felt bad for Brunson because Brunson was getting his face bounced off the mat, and the ref was still like, he's good. Like the corner had to throw in the towel for him. Then beating Robert Whittaker the way he did, beating Adesanya the way he did, taking the belt off Strickland, and probably which was the boring fight of the last 5 fights for him, and people didn't like. So this fight I expect to be sort of similar. I think DDP is on another level now. I think he has proven it. I think people wanted to doubt him. I think people, even when he beat Whittaker, were like, I still don't think he could beat Adesanya. Beats Adesanya, which now I think we can feel that Adesanya is past his prime, and beat Adesanya handedly. In the fight against Sean, people thought it was close, but I picked Sean in that fight, and I thought Dricus won 4 rounds to 1. I felt that he was still a much better fighter in that one. And in this one, I feel like Strickland's just going to be same tactic, maybe a little different, but still straightforward, simple, very simple, but it's always effective. Like he's been effective. It's very hard for certain people to manage that sort of solid jab, sort of, just constantly coming after you. It's hard. I'm not a professional fighter, but I can't imagine trying to fight while going backwards, for 25 minutes. It's not easy. And I think Strickland points that out and makes sure he absolutely is very methodical in that approach and will keep you super uncomfortable with that Philly shell. DDP is the most unpredictable fighter I think I've ever watched when it comes to throwing punches. This dude looks like he's gassed, and he's not at times. He looks like he is in almost like in a bar fight with a jacket over his head, like like in the NHL, like when you just pull the jacket over and you're just like and it works. I don't know how, but it's worked because it's just like he's such a big middleweight that it's like when he's going full force at you and he puts his weight on you like that, he's not 185 pounds. He's like 225 pounds. And I think that's such a big difference for these middleweights like Whittaker and for Adesanya, who really do weigh in at 190, 200. And even Sean Strickland, who said he's at cap at 210. You know what? So he's a big guy for this weight class. And I think when you're constantly pushing forward and DDP's constantly doing this crazy shit, you don't have a skilled boxer in Sean Strickland that could just easily find a way to just, with his head down, not looking, find him with an uppercut or sweep the leg. And, it's going to be super unorthodox on both ends. I think Strickland had a really tough time in the first fight trying to read, how DDP was coming forward toward him and was having a really tough time trying to continue his Philly shell and continue going forward. But I also think with the headbutt too that happened, I think in round 3, I think that really fucked Sean up. I think not only did that really hurt him, but I think he was super like confused as to like what to do next because I think he felt the cut was really nasty, and I think he even said that he felt that he was going to lose the fight no matter what because of how bad he looked, and he said that he felt like he couldn't see, even though he could, that he felt like he was like a one-dimensional fighter now. And so shit like that happens. We saw it in Cormier's last fight that the eye poke kind of ruined his chances of winning. It happens. Shit happens. But I think this is a very fun fight. I just think DDP is on a different level right now. I know I talked my fucking ear off. I think DDP is at a different level at this moment in time, and I think Strickland is so desperate for that belt back after he said he didn't care. I think this fight's going to be way better than the first fight, and I think people aren't paying attention to it because of how dog water this fucking card is. So I feel like that happens a lot with the UFC. When these cards happen, people don't pay for the pay-per-view, and it ends up being an incredible fight, incredible fights to happen. But keep this short. I think DDP is going to eat a lot of shots, but it's not going to be ones that affect him. I think his overwhelming style could be one that wears Strickland down because Strickland's so used to being the one that overwhelms you with the constant forward pressure. But I think DDP could find a way to just overwhelm you with the weight and take you to the ground. And I think when he can take, like he did Adesanya, slow it forward but take Sean down, I think Sean's going to have a really difficult time, even with his cardio and how good his cardio is, really trying to find a way to get back on the feet. So I think this one will be sort of a points matchup, and I see DDP winning by unanimous decision. But I think this fight's going to be very, very good, and I think Strickland has really good consistency and pressure himself, that whoever can win the pressure game has a chance of winning this fight. So it's going to be good, but I think DDP will take it.
Dude, you took a lot of the angles that I had in this fight, but I think that might have been my favorite piece of analysis from you in the history of the show. Dude said it looks like he's fighting with a jacket over his head, and it's so true. Yeah, man. Funny enough, when I was taping this fight, looking back, I'm like, man, if any of these guys has more to learn from the first fight, is Sean Strickland. Like, I think he, like you said, he was right there. But I also got very frustrated when watching the tape of both of these guys because I'm like, man, Sean Strickland has all the tools to win this fight. He has never been in a 5th round fight that he did not look like the fresher fighter in the 5th round. He is a cardio machine. Now, you would think being a cardio machine and being an offensive fighter goes hand in hand. And for whatever reason, there's a huge disconnect there in Sean Strickland's game where, yes, he is a cardio machine. And yes, he can get all these things done, right? But can he maintain a level where he looks good in a match like this? When I was looking at the tape for this fight, I think both of these guys have a lot to learn from the first fight, but Sean Strickland more so than the two. I think looking back at that first fight, he has all the tools to win this fight. He showed it then, and he has really high-level cardio, and I think that is the biggest advantage I think he has in this matchup. You would think having extremely high-level cardio would go hand in hand with being an offensive fighter and having that offensive output. For whatever reason with Sean Strickland, it doesn't work out that way. He's a big disconnect whenever it comes to how confident he is to go and engage in those striking exchanges. I think if Sean Strickland comes in with the game plan here where he is hell-bent on making Dricus work, I think we've seen Dricus get pressured in every one of his fights, man. Even in the fights he's lost, I mean, he's knocked out Robert Whittaker, right? I thought Robert Whittaker clearly won round 1 and did so well when he was pressuring him because let's face it, right? I agree with you on everything you said about him looking like he's fighting with a fucking towel over his head. I think he fights with a very unique style, but he just makes bad decisions in covering up, right? Like he goes full defense a lot when he's getting pressured, when he really doesn't have to. Like, I think he would really benefit from spending a lot of time just working on his jab, right? And just taking what's given to him. I think he has a little bit of that orangutan arm, right? Where for his body type, he has long arms. And he could really benefit from having those range tools. But I think for whatever reason, he just, I don't know, man. He's real susceptible to pressure, puts his, like, looks like out of sorts out there, right? He looks like he dances with two left feet. But then once, like you said, once he starts going downhill on you, that's when everything goes bad for everyone. Like, it's kind of like he makes a decision, like, okay, this sucks out here. I'm losing. All right, time to win. Like that's just how it feels like. And shout out to Jan Blachowicz and his patented Blocko Blitz. I think Dricus has the blitz, man. That when Dricus is going downhill and he's pressing that R2 trigger, that motherfucker's dangerous, right? But if you could limit those blitzes by pressuring him to the fence, this is an easy fight, in my opinion, for Sean Strickland. And that's why I wavered. I kind of went back and forth between who I was going to pick. Obviously, it's a little easier to make that pick when you got him on Dynasty. I think this is a coin flip fight. You could argue there's some value on Sean Strickland until you see the staph infection on his arm, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be hard for him to overcome that on top of what is now somehow considered a generational middleweight, right? This is someone that since day one, I've been talking about how bad he is, right? But God damn it, when you're good, you're good. And I think ultimately the best skill in MMA is being dynamic. And I think he has that more than anyone, right? I think he's a fighter that's going to inspire the nation, right? We're going to see a lot more Dricus Du Plessis coming up in the UFC because goddamn, when you have that athletic platform, just hit that R2, baby. I think this fight, there's some more technical aspects to this. I really would like to see Sean Strickland offensively wrestle in this matchup. Obviously, given the staff, it's probably less likely we see that. But I think the word was in the gym was how much grappling focused this camp was. And I think, honestly, he could really put it on Dricus in those phases. I think he's the more technical fighter when it comes to the ground game. But ultimately, I just feel like I don't trust Sean Strickland to push his advantages. And I trust Dricus Du Plessis to, even when he looks like shit, to go out there and find a moment to win a round, right? Like, I think he is that dynamic athlete. I think this one goes to decision, though, like the rest of Sean Strickland's fights. But I'm going with Dricus to win once again. South Africa, you got a champ still. And just like that, Sean,
Hold on.
because I was about to move on, but go ahead.
I was going to say, my first point is, if you had to do it, unanimous decision, I'm assuming you're saying, what would you say the numbers be? 48-47, 49-46?
Probably 48-47.
Yeah,
one round fight.
Comes down. Wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's good enough for me.
Do you think it was closer? Well, how do you think?
Honestly, I have it the same as you, but I honestly could see this being 50-45, to be completely honest with you, for Dricus. I think Dricus is looking at this as he didn't want this fight. I think he looks at this kind of the way Volkanovski saw the Holloway 3 fight. Like, I've already beaten this guy. You know what? I get it. People want to see this fight again. It's time for me to make sure this chapter's closed. There's other guys coming up, that I look forward to beating. And I think someone like Strickland needs to be put back to where he is. And I think, honestly, I think Dricus is going to find a way to take this to the ground. And I think Sean really struggles on the ground for bigger middleweights, guys bigger than him. So I think this could be 50-45, but I would love to see Strickland do just a tiny bit something different. Really try to use, his defensive prowess and kind of use the counter a little bit. And I would love to have this fight be close, but I could really see a crazy 50-45 situation.
You heard the man. It's going to be wide like this fucking head-to-head race, ladies and gentlemen. We get to move on to my favorite part of this show, the Dynasty Draft, ladies and gentlemen. And Sean, you have the pleasure of kicking us off with the first pick. So I knew this was going to take 45 minutes. So I took the time here to
Cody
make
Steele.
sure. Oh, look at that! Right off the rip. You love to see it. I'm a little sad. I thought I was gonna find a way to sneak that one in. I thought that was gonna be mine.
Well, it's tough. I didn't realize going into this one that I was going to have so many of the fighters already. So it makes it tough. I don't want to really go against myself. And I also think Cody Steele is probably the best prospect to look at on this board right now. So I'll take it.
Very fair. I tend to look at it the same way. This one's a little tough though, because it's like, do I want to pick a guy just so I don't get a L? Well,
Yeah,
I may
you
still
do.
get the L. So, do I want to pick that guy, or do I want to pick a guy I think has a tough fight ahead of him, but also not have the same upside? I might have a better upside.
It's tough.
But I get two picks, right? I can't bitch too much.
Yeah.
Hey, fuck it. Give me Mr. Quinlan. Reluctantly.
And you can't lose.
Yeah, can't lose. Can't win either.
Yep.
And then, you know what? Fuck it. Give me. Do I want to go head to head with you? Probably not. Give me Aleksandre Topuria. Almost went Gabriel Santos there, but why not take the namesake? Sean, my favorite part about this draft is you still have to make a pick.
I know. That's the worst part. That is the absolute worst part of this whole thing. Let me just make sure before I pick this one last fighter. This is tough because this is what always happens when you get to that last pick and you're kind of like, I don't want any of these guys. I would forfeit the draft here if I could, but because I can't, I will. Oh man, this is not good. Not good at all. Not good at all. Not good at all here.
Do it, you coward. I know you want to do it. Just do it. Pick Jake Matthews. I know you want to do it.
I'm honestly considering it. But Jake Matthews is the king of 3 wins, 1 loss. And
3 wins? That's a lot of wins.
He's the king of 50-50. So, oh man, this is not fun for me. All right, give me Jake. Give me Jake here.
Jake Matthews. You heard
I was thinking about Teixeira here. I just I gotta see one. I gotta see the Tafa fight first.
Yeah. Did I scare you with my prediction? Is that what it was?
No, it's not that. I just honestly it could be that. Like I was saying to you, I was thinking the same thing with Hunt versus Struve, where I could absolutely see that situation where Tafa just clips him till 2 weeks from now, and that's what I said in the breakdown. I said Teixeira could wake up 2 weeks from now wondering when the fight is, and they have to break it down to him that you just woke up. So I don't want to pick a guy and then find out that he doesn't even know where he is or who he is. I'll take the experience.
That's funny as hell, bro. I don't know how the hell you got there, but my guy got there. Shout out. So the dynasty matchup is as follows. I have Sean Strickland, Rodolfo Bellato, Anshul, Jubli, Quinlan, Salkilld. So I'm 1-1 no matter what. And I got Aleksandre Topuria. My guy Sean has Dricus Du Plessis, Zhang Weili. Wait, what? Why did I say I have her? You have both of them. Zhang Weili, Tatiana Suarez, Jack Jenkins, Tom Nolan, Kevin Jousset, Hyung Sung Park, Wang Cong, Jake Matthews, and Cody Steele. This guy's got all the fucking and all the fighters that matter too. So I think it shows. We're drafting well here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Despite me having Anshul, Jubli, ignore that. It's okay.
Let me ask you quick. If you had to rank your picks, your squad for this week, 1 out of 10, and your confidence, how do you feel your 5 fighters are gonna do this week? What are your predictions?
I think I'm gonna go 3-2. I think Rodolfo should win. I think Topuria should win. I got 1-1, and then I think Sean Strickland's gonna lose. So actually, I'm gonna go 2-3.
What's that? Wait, what's the
third? So yeah, fuck you for bringing that up, you piece of shit. I was already in my feels, and then you're gonna do this shit to me in front of all my friends.
It could be bad for me too, man. I got 10 fighters, man. 10 fighters is always scary. It can get ugly real quick, especially when you're early in Dynasty. It can get bad. So I'm praying for a good night. Thank God.
I'm praying for
Maybe
Strickland.
Tatiana
Come
are
through
facing
for me,
each other.
brother.
But after that, it should be a better night for me. But it could easily go sour quick. So we'll see.
But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of the MMA edition of The Sideline Guys. It's been a pleasure. It's always great to have you back. And thank you for all the support you've been showing this month on the shows, man. It's been really cool to see the growth of the channel. So keep doing it, ladies and gentlemen. Keep telling a friend to tell a friend. Before you know it, we'll be the biggest thing out in podcasting. Because, God damn it, this show is quality. All the shows we do at OTS is quality. So make sure you're locked in. But with all the pleasantries out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully next pay-per-view, we get a better card. Because goddamn, this shit sucks. But thank you so much for tuning in. And next time you get depressed, right? Next time you get a little down on yourself, you're thinking about how bad it could get. You're like, fuck, can't believe I'm living this life. You could be me in Dynasty. We'll see you all next week. Peace.